So hello back again to the Expanding Earth Model Revisited Part 2. We stopped reviewing the model where no mass came. Bollocks. Sorry. We revisited the model where the mass of the Earth basically remained constant. In other words, that variation of the model says first the Earth looked like this and weighed so and so much tons, then the Earth grew to be as big as this and still weighed so and so much tons. At least there are several possible mechanisms how this might have worked. The first is, and mostly revisited, the gravitational constant has changed. Therefore the gravitational pull inward was less, and so the inner pressure of the Earth popped it up. The problem with this is the inner pressure of the Earth is only because the gravitational pull went inward. Now, if that happens, if the gravitational pull lessens, the pressure lessens. So that would not apply for any expansion. Then, again, the size of that shape of mineral salt. Remember, I live in Salzburg. These kind of salt spheres can be purchased anywhere for good price. Normally I use them for Qigong practice. But anyway, that kind of stuff doesn't change if you change the gravitational surroundings. It will still have the same diameter. Because how big it is actually depends on the electric bonds between the atoms that are transferred by the electrons. In other words, only because gravity changes, the size or the volume of a rock, of a solid or a liquid body don't change. So a change in the gravitational pull as a result of a change in the gravitational constant would not apply for a change in size in any solid or liquid body. It would apply for a change in size in a gaseous body. So the Sun would have expanded, or one of our gas giants, Jupiter and Neptune. We wouldn't know if such happened. But the Earth only consists of solid and liquid phases, no gas phases. How do we know this? Basically by sending sound waves through the Earth and measuring the echoes. There are sound waves that go through solids and through liquids, and there are types of sound waves that only go through solids and not through liquids. So, in other words, if such a sound wave approaches, that goes through the rock and approaches molten lava, it cannot go through the molten lava, and since energy is conserved, there is only one way: it is bounced back. If another sound wave comes, it goes right through and we measure it at the other end of the Earth. So, by these kind of echo measurements, which are very reliable and which are also used to find oil and stuff, so they really work and there is nothing much theoretical about them, they are very reliable. So by this we know the Earth has no gas phase. So a change in gravitational pull would not change the size. The size of a piece of rock doesn't change if you put it here on Earth or if you put it up at the Lagrange point where you'd actually experience all the gravitational fields equal themselves out. While you put the rock at the Lagrange point, it would still have the same gravitational constant, but nonetheless the gravitational field would be lesser, and so you would have the same effect. So changing gravity does not change size for rock, liquids and solids. Now, the other thing is the Planck constant may have changed. The Planck constant applies for actually a great many things, but it also applies for how big things are. These are two atoms bound together by electrons they share. Now, if the Planck constant goes different, they would come closer together or go farther away. Now the problem is, we know from calculations that if the Planck constant changes ever so slightly, the universe as we know it, yeah, sounds dramatic, the universe as we know it, would go down the gusher. It would simply lose all stability, so we would not be there to ask the question in the first place. The only way how the Planck constant could change without the universe losing its stability would be if every other natural constant would change proportionally. Problem is then we wouldn't notice that. There would be no way to measure that. So, one thing that remains is thermal expansion. You know, make it cold and it shrinks. Heat it up and it expands. And since, as we also know, the inner core of the Earth is pretty hot, we may reason that compared to how it originally was, it might be pretty expanded. I'm still working on the maths because such calculations are pretty nifty, and I will have to do some simplifications, but what I have calculated so far, the figures just don't match. So for the moment you will have to take my word for it, but intellectual honesty demands that I present the calculations. I just didn't want to wait further with my video response because my friend Brutus Cassius I have been kept there. Sorry, I've been keeping him waiting for long enough now, and since I promised to make that video response, I'm actually doing it right now. I will show the calculations so that you have an idea how to check it yourselves. But basically thermal expansion doesn't match out according to my calculations so far. And yeah, so we are pretty much bereft of any mechanism. There is one last mechanism, again for the first model of the Earth, where the mass was not constant but growing, that might apply. There is the suggestion that there is some kind of energy to mass conversion. So, energy from somewhere is converted into mass, like positrons and electrons, antiprotons and protons and stuff. And that this, from some unknown energy source, or from the energy stored in the heat of the Earth, mass is produced, and therefore the Earth becomes heavier, more mass, and since if you stuff more things in a box or in a balloon, the balloon blows up. While we cannot completely outrule such a mechanism, given what we know about physics today, makes it probable that this is a science fiction thing. Because if that were true, it would happen in every planet, and if it were true that this was responsible for the Earth's expansion, it should happen in any planet, and we should be able to measure it, or its effects. We don't. So, Occam's razor suggests that an easier model might be more valid. And the plate tectonic model is, although it doesn't answer all the questions, more in accordance with what we know. Again,